Howdy, and welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be going over Ryobi's 4-volt USB lithium 3/8" ratchet. First, let me talk about the elephant in the room. These are not made for high torque. These are not made for work in the field. This is for home use. Please understand that. I know some people are gonna skip this part and they're gonna leave some real doozies of comments below, but hey, that's okay. Go for it. They're not for everybody, and they have very specific use case. And today we're going to be exploring the limitations of this, but also the perks of having a tool like this. So what are the use cases for this specific tool? Something like this is not going to break a nut loose. Something like this is not going to be what you need in a big rig. Something like this, however, is going to be the great tool that once you've broken the nut loose, you can just sit there and pull the trigger and it unscrews that nut for you. And that is going to save your wrist and it's going to save you time. Because if you're not sitting there having to crank that ratchet, assuming you even have enough of an arc swing of that ratchet, you don't have to worry about that with this. This has the tight little compact head that's on it. You can put it in those tight little places. That's going to prevent you from having to do those quarter or eighth or even a 16th turn. Because of the size of the head, you can get in there and do it a lot faster with a tool like this. So let's go ahead and explore this tool for a little bit. Well, first of all, you'll see that we have the typical battery compartment at the bottom. It's just twist off, slide in your battery, and twist on. Then we do have a variable speed trigger that is on here. On the back, we have the direction selector. So if you're wanting to tighten it, you turn it one way. If you're wanting to loosen it, you turn it the other way. Now we do also have one little feature that is very nice to have, and it's this ability to lock the trigger. But what that does is it not only locks the trigger, but it also allows you to twist without the concern of hitting the trigger as you're trying to tighten or undo bolts. And you can actually use this as a standard ratchet. Now I wouldn't put a lot of torque on this. I wouldn't try to, put 50, 80, 100 foot-pounds of torque on something. But if you're just trying to do the last finishing touches, or if you're trying to take something off and you want to get that initial pop loose whenever you're trying to get the nut off the bolt, this will allow you to do that. And then from there, you can simply pull the trigger and allow it to undo the bolt the rest of the way. The other nice feature that you can see it has on it is it has a little LED on the head, and it stays on for a little bit. I love having tools that have this capability, because if you're in one of those tight little places and you need your work area illuminated.
Dale, what are you doing? Give me some light. I can't see. No!
Just a quick trigger pull will give you that illumination. Like most USB lithium tools, you'll notice it also has the little indicator light at the bottom. It's going to be green whenever the battery has most of its charge, and it will show red if the battery is too kaput. The other thing it does is it lets you know if you've overloaded the tool. So you can actually hold it and you'll see that it will flash red if it's overloaded and it's not able to do what it needs to do. Wait for the light to stop blinking, and then you should be able to pull the trigger again. So let's go ahead and show the typical use case for this particular ratchet. I've got vice grips here, and I have a 11 mil nut on this bolt. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to tighten it down, and I'm going to set this to reverse, and I'm gonna show that this isn't a torque monster. I'm gonna try to break this loose. You'll see that it hit, but it doesn't do anything. That's okay. We're gonna go and lock out the trigger, and we're going to undo it. Now I'm gonna put the trigger back on. Now that I've got it loose,
Fook me, that was fast.
and you can see just how quickly it can pull that nut off. Now you saw me talk about locking the trigger there. You don't have to lock the trigger. I am choosing to lock the trigger whenever I do it because I don't want to accidentally hit it whenever I'm trying to break it loose and cause the tool to overload. Now, Ryobi says this will go up to 10 foot-pounds. So we're gonna tighten this down to 1 foot-pound, and then we're gonna test it and see if it can actually pull the nut off at 1 foot-pound. So it did 1 foot-pound. Let's see if it'll do 1.5 foot-pounds. So it did 1.5 with just a single trigger pull. Let's see if it does the same thing at 2.0. Okay, so as we can see, at 2 foot-pounds, it actually required a couple of pulls on the trigger. It's not even a full foot-pound.
Are you kidding me?
0.7 on that one. 0.7 again. So as you can see, whenever we run down a nut onto a bolt, it doesn't even quite hit the numbers that Ryobi is talking about. It's not going to be able to hit the 10 foot-pounds that they attest to it. But does that mean that it's not a good tool to have? No. If you're in a very specific niche looking for something that can help you with nuts and bolts, then this actually does a really good job. You have to remember, you can still use this as a standard ratchet. So you can break the bolt loose or the nut loose with this, and then simply pull the trigger and allow the nut or bolt to undo itself the rest of the way. If you're trying to put a bolt or nut back on, you simply swap it on the head to where you're able to put it in, pull the trigger, put the bolt down, put the nut on. Once it gets down toward the bottom, you then can use the ratchet to actually tighten it the rest of the way down. This is just for those situations where you have a crazy long bolt or a really tight situation and you don't want to sit there and fatigue your hand. So we made ourselves a little jig here so that we can show a good use case for this particular tool. I've mentioned that this is really good at breaking nuts loose and then undoing them with very little effort. So let's see just how quickly we can get these 12 nuts off of these 12 bolts. I'm not expecting it to untorque them. I'm going to untorque them by hand and then unscrew them. So you can see that it actually does a very consistent job. It's very easy to break those nuts loose and then rapidly move from bolt to bolt to bolt to undo these items. Now, having used this for a while, one little caveat I will say, be very careful of how you hold the trigger. If you're not careful, you can actually get your fingers caught in between the trigger and the body itself, and it gives just a little pinch. It doesn't hurt much, but it will pinch your fingers. I've noticed that not only just now whenever I've used it, but also in the past. Let's go ahead and put all of these nuts back onto the bolts, and let's use the tool to get them all back down in place.
It's turbo time.
So as you can tell, it works very well for its intended purpose. It sank all 12 nuts down without any issue. It pulled them off, it put them on. There was no problem whatsoever with this tool. Now the question is, do I actually use this tool? Well, I just recently had to pull off some Kia Soul headlights so I could sand them out and clear coat them. Whenever I did that, I actually went and picked this up in order to pull those headlights off. A couple of 10mm bolts and it came right out. This made that job very easy. The other thing I like about this is whenever I put the bolts in, I don't have to worry about it over torquing something and breaking plastic. And that is a very nice thing about this. If I grabbed my big 3/8" 18 volt up here, it would have torqued it down so bad it would have splintered that plastic into nothingness, especially with the age of the plastic. This, I didn't have to worry about possibly accidentally pulling the trigger too hard and causing that problem. If you have any questions about these little 3/8" ratchets, please leave them in the comments below, or any of the other videos that I made. I love talking with you all, especially great comments like this one. Thank you very much for leaving that comment, and thank you for watching.